unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
You know who wants power more than anyone? I think. I'm developing a theory here. I'm inviting you along. All right? But think about who wants power most. Who do you think it might be? People who are beautiful? People who are talented? Creative? I don't know. You know, who is the most vulnerable? Here's a theory I'm going to have for you. I theorize that the people who crave power most are the people who fear wrath the most. And who would those people be? I would say that those people might be people who have habits or states of mind that they know or feel really, really interfere with the moral standards of others. You know? 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you know, if somebody would have told me that all those in power, that there are these huge elite pedophile rings amongst the powerful, I would have said, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, you know, that they're all rapists or whatever, or they're all Satanists, or you name the terrible thing, and I would have just said, oh, you're going a little nuts. They can't all be that way. And of course they can't all be. But, you know, and that's kind of, you know, 5 years ago. That's when Alex Jones started screaming up and down like a lunatic and getting all red-faced about the elite pedophile rings and the Satanists and the globalists. All things that I just kind of rolled my eyes at. I'll be honest. I was just rolling my eyes at all these things. But now, I mean, only 5 years later, we've got the whole Jeffrey Epstein story. You know, we see how ABC News is covering it up when they already had it for a long time. You've seen that Project Veritas video, right? And now we can see that the person who leaked that ABC footage ended up working at CBS, and then today CBS fired that person. So ABC got CBS to fire that person. Interesting. Why? You know, meanwhile they're of course claiming Trump is a pussy grabbing whatever. You know, it's again, everything that they accuse Trump of being, or any of their opponents of being, is literally just a confessional. It's an accusation as confession, and I know I've been over this before. Pardon me if I repeat myself, but it just keeps getting more and more crystal clear that they're not even trying to hide their confessions. They're not even trying to make them obscure any longer. It's literally, you can literally just say, well, what are they accusing him of doing? And that's what they are doing. You know? It's like they're holding a stolen cookie with in their hand, a cookie that says, I stole this, while pointing at somebody else and saying, that man is a cookie thief. You know? And you just think, well, how could that be? Like, how? This is why conspiracies never worked for me. I couldn't believe that all these people would conspire, you know. I believe that there would be whistleblowers like this lady at ABC who moved to CBS, who has now been fired. And all these people at Project Veritas are getting fired. And by the way, I don't think the world of Project Veritas. I hate the way they use music in their editing. I feel like if you're going to tell the truth about something, you don't need to put scary music behind it. Maybe. I don't know. But hold on. All right. So, but the problem I always had with conspiracy theories is that it just was too hard for me to believe that all these powerful people could all be bad. And then, but now the more and more I think about it, I just, and the other thing is the part where I claim to be the stupid man that I am, is that sometimes it takes me a long time to put pieces together, you know? Like, even when you say powerful people, why is it taken me so long, even though I've always been an anti-authoritarian, and I've always wanted to diminish the power of the government and keep it low, it still has taken me a long time to really see how clear it is that those who seek power are more than likely the greatest offenders of that which humanity in general abhors. You know what I mean? So let's just go to the extreme one, pedophilia. You know, pedophiles. Without, well, obviously not without question, because there are literally fathers, mothers, and uncles who sexually abuse their kids. So that's getting as ugly as it possibly can. But let's speak totally generally. Most people, most organisms, mammals, how about mammals? Most mammals, I don't know, I can't even generalize there because I've seen videos of rats eating their babies and stuff like that. Let's just stick with humans, okay? Most human beings have a real desire to protect their own children to a really kind of radical degree that's not even healthy for their neighbors, you know? They'll lie, cheat, and steal to protect their own children. So, abusing children is, you know, very rationally and obviously one of the greatest, air quotes, evils of society. And I use the word evil because I'm trying to put it in a, you know, most people use that in a religious text. But it's just something that no matter what offends most people. They're like, oh, how dare you take advantage of a child or ruin his life in such a way. So if you are a pedophile, you're going to be thinking, oh shit, my wiring. And I'm assuming that a lot of people, whether it be by nature or nurture, quite frankly, I'm not one of these romantic people who believes that nature only creates good things. I think nature fucks up a lot. So it's plausible that nature might create somebody with wiring that was geared towards sexual feelings towards young children. That could, and then of course with all the nurturing, if somebody's abused when they're little and their wiring gets fucked up and they start associating childhood with sexuality, blah blah blah, you know. But putting all that aside, let's say you're one of these pedophiles, you know, just out of self-preservation, you are going to want to seek power. And you are going to want to find your tribe, the other pedophiles. You know, when that whole John Podesta Pizzagate thing went, and I know I'm repeating myself here, but that whole Pizzagate thing went down, I went down the rabbit hole and I really looked into it and blah, 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 blah. And most of the stuff I found, the basement tapes of the pizza shop, and weren't very convincing to me. They were all easy to explain away, and it just seemed like people exacerbating their own fears, or it seemed like a bunch of confirmation bias. But the part that didn't seem that way, and was pointed out to me by my Facebook friend Christina, was that she asked me, she said, "How many pedophile friends do you have?" And I said, "Well, I can't think of any. If I have any, I don't know that they are pedophiles. I've associated with some people that I suspected of pedophilia, and I no longer associate with them. One of them has a curly mustache and lives in San Francisco, and I wouldn't accuse him of being a pedophile, but he certainly had really strong interest in very young girls. It's like the day they became legal, like on their 18th birthday was the day he wanted to, deflower them." And I just kind of go, well, okay, well, if somebody's going to be so open about that publicly, I wonder what their private feelings are like, Anyway, the answer to the question was, I don't think I do know any, And if I did, I would distance myself from them, or maybe shoot them in the head in a back alley or something. I don't know. But then she pointed out, she goes, "Look at the Podestas. How many known pedophiles are around them in that group that have been charged and convicted? If your Facebook friend group and your close circle consists of a bunch of pedophiles, it's like birds of a feather, right?" Yeah, so Epstein comes out, and he apparently made his whole living. Nobody knows how he really got his money, but it seems to be getting clearer and clearer that his billions were made from purely blackmail. And that's what this woman at ABC was saying, when she didn't know she was being recorded. Or maybe she did know. I think these people know when the camera's on. I think sometimes people, this is one of those convenient mistakes where, they let it slip, hoping it would get leaked. I don't know. But, so her claim is that he made all of his money purely by blackmailing people. In other words, flying them to his island, Pedophile Island, getting them in compromising situations sexually. This is apparently the oldest trick in the book. He'd film them or videotape them or just have dirt on them, and then he would just basically blackmail them into doing what he wanted. I mean, he ended up with a $15 million house in New York that was just given to him by a rich guy, signed over, power of attorney. You look at all this stuff and you go, that seems like something that would happen because of a blackmailing situation. And there's the other whole thing, and I know somebody really close to me had claimed to be the victim of pedophilia and ritual pedophilia when she was young, and I used to be skeptical of her. The person who did this to her was a cop. Anyway, without getting into the details, the lore around that I always considered to be, it sounds kind of conspiracy theorist to me, but the lore has always been within these groups, even when you look at a fraternity, the whole idea of hazing someone and making them do disgraceful things like running around the room while holding a frozen hot dog in their butt cheeks is so that everybody, it's based on the concept of mutual destruction. Everybody gets dirt on each other, and that creates a sense of security amongst that group, because one person can't be a whistleblower unless they're willing to, expose themselves as well. That's the concept, right? And that seems to be the concept of I've watched all these videos that I used to not believe, but there's a really good case. I can't remember the details, but there's this boys club, and oh God, when you really look at it and how they were just seizing upon these little young boy prostitutes in Miami, and then there was all these government levels. The more you look at it, the more you realize, yeah, well, it's getting harder and harder to deny that there really are circles of power which thrive and operate on this philosophy of mutual destruction, on this idea of blackmail, on this, and it's based in self-preservation. Because imagine what, well, honestly, I'm kind of losing faith in some of this, but I was going to say, imagine what your average person would do if they knew what was really going on. Imagine what they would do if they really knew that Bill Clinton was fucking 15-year-old girls, and hanging around with people who fuck 14-year-old girls and 13-year-olds and 12 and 10 and 7, and how low does it go? And it's weird that there seems to be it's like the degrees it gets worse or the younger they go, right? You'd hope, you would hope that your average person would revolt and, demand that these people be hauled off to the gallows and hanged in the town square. You would hope, right? But gosh, it's weird that it's kind of turning out that either people would rather remain in denial about it, which is, I think, probably what my problem has been over the years. Maybe why I've doubted the conspiracy theories and such is that I've kind of just wanted to remain in denial about it, because it's easier in a way than having to completely confront it. While also, I've been promoting complete decentralization and taking the power away from these government officials entirely. So I've known it, but also been in denial about it. Or at least it seems. And who knows? I don't know. Nobody knows. I don't know how deep the Jeffrey Epstein thing goes. I don't know if we ever will. I don't know if it does make a difference to me if it was Jeffrey Epstein and his pals fucking 16 and 17-year-old models who were already modeling, because I was a teenager at one time. And when I look at my 15 and 16-year-old self, yeah, I can say older people shouldn't have been taking advantage of me. But I also realized that my brain then and my sense of morality then was intact. It was already intact. In fact, it might have been even more intact then than it is now. So I don't necessarily buy in as much as everybody else does that suddenly this age of consent is hard and fast. And it's not also, by the way, across the country. In some places, the age of consent is 14, then 16, then 18, and blah, blah, blah. So people haven't really resolved it. For me, it's almost case by case. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. But it does make a difference to me if it is 16 and 17-year-old models or 8 and 9 and 10-year-old kids. There's a huge difference to me. Like, especially in those younger years, the further you go back, the more and more, I'm not going to say innocent, but the more and more easily it is to really fuck up the wiring in those formative years, And that is certainly not making excuses. It's just understanding that there are shades. So, and I'm just saying is, how dark does it go? I mean, and the more I dig into it, the more and more I'm starting to realize, because, I still feel myself, even this discussion right now is kind of part denial, right? I still feel like I'm kind of going, well, if they're 16, 17-year-olds, that's different than that. And in my mind, I'm probably trying to convince myself that it was more that, because if it was 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, then it's just like, oh my God, that's when your head explodes with rage, you know? You're like, not that there's an excuse for the 17 or 18-year-old, you know, or 16, or not that there's an excuse there. But come on, every single person listening to this has seen a 16-year-old boy or a 16-year-old girl and been surprised to find out they were 16 and not 25. Do you know what I mean? I remember in high school, there were girls that I just thought, how are you in my high school? There was this one girl, I can't remember her name, but she looked to me like she was 30. You know, she looked like a full-grown woman, and she was in my grade. You know, and we're all aware of that. So nature, everybody doesn't develop at the exact same rate, blah, 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 blah. And nature has other designs hormonally and XYZ. Nature will create a 14-year-old person, man or woman, that is as large and physically developed as a 30-year-old person. Okay? So, anyway, again, sounds like I'm being trying to rationalize, and it's because I kind of am. There's a big difference between that, this fully developed 15-year-old boy or girl. There was this kid in my junior high. I remember this guy, Brad something. In junior high, he had a full beard, like in 7th grade, right? He was a man. I mean, mentally he obviously wasn't, but if you told me that he, at that age, had been involved with a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old woman, I would go, well, yeah, because he could have easily represented himself as being 25 or 26, and he would have passed. Nobody would have known if he had lied, and children lie, you know. So anyway, case by case. I'm rambling here, I understand that. But when you get into the area where it's children, 5-year-old, 4-year-olds, 7-year-olds, that's where it gets into like, holy fucking shit. That's when it just gets unmanageably unfathomable, you know, when it comes to rage. And that's when you would expect your average human to be totally disgusted. And I'm kind of trying to get back to my theory about power. And that's also those people who are either by nature wired to be that way or by nurture wired to be that way. Those people are in danger of being ripped to shreds in the town square if they are found out. So it does follow that they would seek out power, real power, for a number of things. To protect themselves, and also, as an extension of that, to mold others into accepting the way they are. And that's when you start seeing that all this really weird shit that we've been seeing from the left lately that we'd never really seen before. This blatant, like, let's change the hormones of kids let's give them hormones when they're 5. They're not old enough to smoke or drink. It's like, can I smoke? No, you're too young. Can I drink? No, you're too young. Can I have sex? No, you're too young. No, can I drive a car? No, you're too young. Can I buy a gun? No, you're too young. Can I change my sex? Sure, fine, whatever you want. You know? When you start seeing that that's actually being filtered down, top down, powerful systems, education filtered down all the way down through the school systems, that's when you start realizing, yeah, those are the people who seek power. And it makes sense that they would slowly but surely work their way into those positions. You know, you add one, old guy goes out, new person comes in, you bring in the people with your same values. You know? And the people that aren't, I just don't think, I think the candidates available. Those who, think about politicians. How often do people who are good at something become politicians rather than just good businessmen or good community members? They don't. That's why incompetence is so high in government. Now, here's the really bad news, and I'm not trying to get dark, but it's starting to become clear to me that my assumption that most people are good, it might not be completely far off, but the ratios are changing more than I imagined. I used to have a view of the world that, literally most people would mostly want to do good things and would opt for good. And like I said in my last podcast, I'm starting to doubt that a lot, because I think people are more likely to just vote for their tribe no matter what. Come hell or high water, they're going to go with their tribe. Now, if their tribe happens to be run by terrible people, pedophiles, rapists, they're still not going to want to abandon their tribe. Just kind of like how children who are abused by their parents still love their parents. They still don't want to leave their families. It gets really gross, and the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm realizing, fuck, there are way more people than I ever wanted to imagine. And I admit that my data is skewed because I'm surrounded in San Francisco by, quite frankly, a lot of people that, the more I look at it, are screwed up. They were the victims of abuse, be it by nature or nurture, had their wiring fucked up. And now, out of survival, they've gathered here, and they are promoting the things that most people generally find at best probably not advisable, and at worst abhorrent, But they're not just satisfied to just. I've always been like, live and let live, Who cares what's happening in somebody's private time? If it doesn't affect you, it doesn't affect you, right? And I've always fought for that, for people. I thought, well, their own private business, who cares? I don't care whatever gives them a funny feeling in their pants. If they want to masturbate to a stuffed animal, it's none of my business. If two men love each other, two women love each other, none of my business. Who gives a shit? I don't care, And so I've always fought for that kind of leave them alone equality. Let them have but when it starts spilling over and they're not satisfied with live and let live, but more like, no, I want my fetish to not only just become kind of like privately accepted, but I want it to become championed, and I want it to become normal. In other words, these people are like, they want to take the outlier and make it the norm. And I've always been like, no, we want to protect the outliers. We don't want to make the outliers the majority. We want to just let the outliers be outliers, and as long as they're not ruining for anybody else, that's fine. I'm an outlier, in the way that I'm a political outlier. Hell, my opinions aren't popular with either party at all. I get just as much shit from the right as I do from the left, Anyway, can you see where I'm going with this? Can you see what I'm talking about with this power, and how it's becoming more and more clear that anyone who seeks power should really be scrutinized as to why. Why do you want this power? I want to know. I don't want them to have it, first of all. Just decentralize that shit. Don't allow them to have that much power, and it's not that big of a deal. But for some reason, humanity allows people. It's a progressive thing. That's why they call themselves progressive. They progressively gain more and more power over your life. And you would think it would be gaining power over your life to create more. I was raised in a way that the authoritarianism was to make me not masturbate, to make me not drink, not smoke. But now this moral authority is like, no, you must masturbate. No, you must watch me fucking. No, you must accept my fetish. In fact, you must partake in my fetish because I'm going to do it in the street. I'm going to block off an entire street and we're going to call it the Folsom Street Fair. You know? We're going to make you pay for it. I'm going to make you participate in my fetish. You know, and by the way, I think marriage is a fetish. That's why I don't think the government should be involved in marriages. I don't think government should be involved in your personal life. I'm meandering, but that's what is becoming clear to me, is that the people who seek power want to rope you into their bullshit. It almost becomes this thing where, oh, you're not going to join my fraternity? Oh, really? Well, I'm going to force you into it. In fact, I'm going to start with you. If you won't join it, then I'm going to make your kids join it. So if you say, I'm going to force you to force your kids to go to school. It's going to be compulsory. And when they go to school, I'm going to teach them about sticking things up their butt before they even have the first thought of sex. Before they ever think of sex on their own, I'm going to implant the ideas of anal sex and toy sex and transgenderism into their minds before they can even get there themselves. And I don't want to get off onto a tangent because there's a completely different... well, it's not. I can just address it here. These podcasts get so long. Anyway, whatever. There's 5 people listening. And if you're listening, you're probably driving. You're not doing anything anyway, so who cares, right? But I one of my things that my friends on the right get upset with me about is I'm always just like, look, I don't worry about nature. I don't think anyone needs to instruct a kid how to evolve sexually. Just as you don't need to instruct a puppy. A puppy will get a boner and it will have sex with a dog that's in heat. Nature's thousands and thousands of years of evolution have already built in that system. You don't need to teach it. The church doesn't need to teach it. The schools don't need to teach it. Your parents don't even really need to teach it. You don't need your mom and dad coming in and telling you how your wiener or your genitals function. Nature's going to tell you. I think the best you can do as a parent is just be kind of like, not tolerant, but just like, well, here's the deal. When these kids have the feelings, if you notice the feelings affecting them, then you can say, well, I've had those too, and let me tell you, you're going to be fine. You're going to make it through. Try to resist all the outside forces that are trying to manipulate you in those regards, because there will be many. Porn, you name it, politicians, school. Now, it used to be just like, watch out for porn. Now it's just like, watch out for your fucking kindergarten teacher telling you that, trying to create doubt in your mind of whether or not you're a boy or a girl. It's just nobody's business. Nature's ahead of the game there. My conservative friends tell me, no, we need to teach kids that, I go, no, I don't. Nature, if you're naturally gay, you're going to be naturally gay, and if you're naturally curious, you might try some things, but then ultimately in the long run, nature creates mostly straight creatures because nature's design seems to be, to reproduce, and that's the purpose of every living organism, is to create a copy or multiple copies of itself in order to survive and to flourish. So nature's in control there. Yeah, I've gone off on a tangent. But yeah, power. Beware of those who seek power, especially because the more and more I look into it, the more these people who seek power aren't just... I used to be like, who cares if they want a bunch of cars? Who cares if they want a bunch of riches and gold, like my last podcast? But what they really seem to want, a lot of them, is to change society so that they are not at risk. And more often than not, the reason why they're at risk is because they are guilty of terrible things. Not all. You know, when they seek power. Okay, let me clarify before I let you go. Not all government officials are seeking power. There really are people in the government that are trying to limit the power of government. So keep an eye on that. I'm not just talking about people who seek government office. I am kind of, though. Still, keep your skepticism for them, but it's people who seek power over the personal lives of others that I think should be held in the highest level of suspicion. Anyway, sorry. That was a dark podcast. Thanks for listening.